What happens when the applause stops? When the doors that once opened effortlessly begin to close, and when a familiar face suddenly finds herself with nowhere to turn. Tonight's story is not about scandal. It is not about accusation. It is about what remains when fame no longer protects. This is the story of Song Yiren and the quiet, unsettling reality many prefer not to see. Stay with us, because this is not the ending people expected. For a long time, visibility defined Song Yiren. Her presence was familiar, her name regularly resurfacing in casting news and industry conversations. Visibility in such moments feels permanent, almost earned. Then, without a dramatic announcement, the visibility softened, not erased, just reduced. Silence in the entertainment world is rarely sudden. It arrives gradually, disguised as a break, a pause, or time away. Yet beneath that quiet lies an uncomfortable truth. Attention does not disappear because it is unneeded, but because it has shifted elsewhere. This transition is not loud enough to alarm, yet heavy enough to unsettle. For the public, it looks uneventful. For the individual, it can feel disorienting, like standing on a stage where the lights have dimmed, but the audience has not yet left. Silence in this context is not rest. It is uncertainty learning how to speak. Support systems in the entertainment industry rarely collapse. They recede. Contracts become under review. Conversations turn non-committal. Assurances are replaced with polite distance. What once felt like teamwork slowly transforms into formality. This withdrawal is particularly difficult because it offers no clear moment of rupture. There is no confrontation to respond to, no decision to argue against, only the growing awareness that momentum, once effortless, now requires explanation. For someone accustomed to structured schedules and professional certainty, this shift can feel deeply personal, even when it is not intended to be. Support in this industry is often conditional, tied not to loyalty, but to movement. When movement slows, the network adjusts accordingly. What remains is not betrayal, but exposure, a realization that stability was never owned, only borrowed. And when it is returned, the silence grows heavier than any public criticism ever could. Movement can be comforting. It creates the illusion of control. Traveling, changing environments, maintaining a composed public image, all of these suggest agency. Yet movement without direction carries its own emotional cost. Psychologically, constant motion can become a way of postponing stillness. And stillness is where unanswered questions wait. When a person runs without a destination, the exhaustion is not physical, it is internal. The mind remains alert, scanning for resolution that never quite arrives. This state is not panic, it is quiet strain. The individual appears calm, even detached, while internally negotiating uncertainty, responsibility, and expectation. Over time, the emotional toll accumulates, not as visible distress, but as persistent fatigue. Running in this sense is not escape. It is endurance, and endurance without rest eventually demands a reckoning. Consequences are often framed as judgment. In reality, they are processes. They emerge not to condemn, but to restore balance between action and responsibility. In professional life, especially under public scrutiny, decisions accumulate quietly. Obligations deferred do not vanish, they wait. And when they resurface, they do so without emotion. This moment in Song Yiren's journey does not resemble punishment. It resembles confrontation with contracts, expectations, and realities that fame once softened. Such moments can feel unfair, particularly when the individual believes they have already paid a price emotionally. Yet systems operate without sentiment. Consequences are not moral verdicts. They are structural responses. Understanding this distinction matters. It reframes the narrative from shame to accountability, from downfall to adjustment. What feels like collapse may, in fact, be alignment. Uncomfortable, unavoidable, and necessary. Endings are often assumed when continuity breaks, but pauses are not conclusions. History offers countless examples of public figures whose most defining chapters began after visibility faded, not because they regained fame immediately, but because they regained perspective. Periods of withdrawal strip away external validation. What remains is quieter, less flattering, but more honest. This is where reassessment begins, without schedules dictating worth, without applause reinforcing identity. An individual confronts a fundamental question: what remains when recognition is absent? Such moments can be destabilizing. They can also be liberating. If this phase is approached not as loss, but as interruption, it opens space for redefinition. Not every return needs to be louder than the departure. Some are steadier, more intentional. Perhaps this moment is not about recovery, but recalibration. Part 6. The human behind the headline. Public narratives often flatten individuals into symbols. A name becomes a headline. A life becomes a talking point. Yet behind every update is a human navigating doubt privately. Song Yiren's story resonates because it mirrors experiences far beyond the entertainment industry. Many recognize the fear of losing relevance, the discomfort of unmet expectations, the loneliness that follows when external affirmation fades. These emotions are not exclusive to fame. They are human. When viewers respond strongly, it is rarely about the details. It is about identification, about recognizing moments when one's own path felt uncertain and support felt conditional. This is why empathy surfaces, even amidst restraint. Not because the story is dramatic, but because it is familiar. Not because it demands sympathy, but because it reflects vulnerability many understand but seldom articulate. This story does not instruct loudly. It suggests gently. It reminds us that success is fragile, not because people fail, but because systems move faster than individuals can adapt. It teaches that silence does not always signal peace, and movement does not always equal progress. Most importantly, it invites restraint, in judgment, in speculation, in certainty. The quiet lesson here is humility, toward others, toward circumstance, toward ourselves. Because careers fluctuate, identities evolve, and no one is permanently defined by a single phase. What endures is not visibility, but integrity in transition. Sometimes the most meaningful growth occurs offstage, away from affirmation, where clarity replaces noise. And when stories like this surface, perhaps their purpose is not to provoke reaction, but reflection. Perhaps the most powerful part of this story is not what has been lost, but what may still be found. When the noise fades, when the roles fall away, what remains can become the foundation for something far more enduring. And sometimes, that is where the real journey begins. Thank you for watching Update X24H. If you value thoughtful storytelling, balanced perspectives, and stories that explore the human side behind the headlines, please consider subscribing to our channel. Your support helps us continue bringing stories that inform, reflect, and inspire. Until next time, stay curious, stay compassionate, and we'll see you in the next update.